just purchased today at the local grocery store. Just as I was getting things for another video, I saw this at the checkout line, and I was like, okay, well, there's another video. Now, I have done a couple other magazines before about ghost stories and stuff like that, but this here's completely different, and this should be very interesting. Terrifying real life stories of haunted houses. And scary mysteries. The house on the cover is definitely of the creepy variety, for sure. And whatever that is peeking out of the top floor window definitely adds to the creepy factor. Plus, ghost towns, creepy cemeteries, abandoned prisons, spooky hotels, and other paranormal places. So if you are all ready to check this out, then I'm ready as well. I had quite a few requests to do another one of these ghost stories and magazine video. So I really hope that you will all enjoy this. Let's begin. Now, this picture right here, I'm pretty sure that this is a famous ghost town. It's actually, I think it's part of a mining town from, way back. It's a nice truck. Okay, so here is our contents. Chapter 1, Houses of Horror. Chapter 2, Hotel Hauntings. Chapter 3, Eerie Ghost Towns. Chapter 4, Paranormal Places. Chapter 5, Unsolved Mysteries. Well, this magazine should be very interesting. Well, that is a very creepy picture. Interesting. Okay, here we go. Houses of Horror, Chapter 1. The big business of dark tourism. Now, again, just like with my other magazine videos, if there's a story that I don't read and you'd like me to, just let me know in the comments section below if you'd like to hear one of these stories that I don't go over. So our first house is the Villisca Axe Murder House. And this is in Villisca, Iowa. Now, one really cool thing about this magazine is if you want a deeper version of the story, because it only gives you a certain amount of the story, pretty much a summary. But if you'd like to read more about each individual story, you can use your smartphone amazing house is K. Pierce Mansion in Gardner, Massachusetts. Right there. I've always loved these huge Victorian style mansions and houses. I think they're quite beautiful. It's very similar to what I live in right now. Just it's divided. Well, apparently the Playboy Mansion is haunted too in Los Angeles. The Mercer Williams House in Savannah, Georgia. Right here. Here we go. The Conjuring House, Burrillville, Rhode Island, and the Amityville Horror House in Amityville, New York. So, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the movie The Conjuring, The Nun, as well as Annabelle. But, right here, these are some of the hauntings that are featured in the movies that are actually based on Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were a couple paranormal investigators that investigated a lot of places. So I'm going to read this one, and maybe this one. Built in 1736, this 14-room Cape Cod style farmhouse in Burrillville, Rhode Island, known locally as the Farm on Round Top Road, was owned for most of its history by a family named Arnold. But it wasn't until the home was sold in 1970 that it began to earn a reputation as a house of horrors. Roger and Carolyn Perrin they were not the only occupants. The family reported smelling rotten flesh and feeling their beds levitate in the middle of the night. Oldest daughter, Andrea Perrin, who has written 3 books about the house, claims one of her sisters had been possessed by a spirit on one occasion. The Perrin family eventually sought the help of demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, who told them the house was haunted by the spirit of a witch who had once lived there. The property sold in May of 2022 for $1.525 million, 27% more than the $1.2 million asking price. The house can be booked for day tours or overnight visits, during which paranormal investigations are highly encouraged. Amityville Horror House. Early in the morning of November 13, 1974, 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. gunned down his father, mother, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters in their home at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, on the southern shore of Long Island. Months later, after a jury convicted DeFeo on 6 counts of second-degree murder, George and Kathy Lutz and her 3 young children from a previous marriage moved into the house, which the couple had purchased for the bargain price of $80,000. The Lutzes knew the place's history, so on the day they moved in, they had a priest bless the home. It didn't help. George claimed the priest felt a slap from an unseen hand and heard a voice telling him to get out. The family heard doors slamming, smelled foul odors, felt cold, and found drops of slime on the car. Pet on the carpet. George later said he would awaken at 3:15 every morning, when DeFeo is believed to have murdered his family. George also claimed that on one occasion, Kathy had been physically transformed into an old woman, and that on another, he their belongings behind. So, that's very interesting. And one familiarity with both of these stories is the smell of a foul odor and or rotting flesh. Ed Gaines Farm. So, a little thing about Ed Gaines. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as well as a little bit of House of a Thousand Corpses by Rob Zombie. Used a little bit of Ed Gein in the movie. Here we go, everyone. Here's a nice little list for your Halloween watching needs. 10 must-watch scary movies. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Rosemary's Baby. Halloween. Alien. The Exorcist. The Shining. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Silence of the Lambs. Jaws. And The Ring. Chapter 2. Hotel. Hauntings. The RMS. Queen Mary. Long Beach, California. Let's read this one. The retired British ocean liner was both bigger and faster than the Titanic, and even more luxurious. With 12 decks featuring an Art Deco design and intricate woodwork polished to a high gleam. It was with good reason that she was the preferred mode of transportation for royalty and celebrities crossing the Atlantic. The Queen Mary embarked on her maiden voyage in May of 1936, steaming from Southampton, England, to New York City in a little more than 5 days. 2 years later, she set a record for the fastest Atlantic crossing, which stood until 1952. But in early 1940, the Queen Mary was repurposed as a troop ship to aid the Allies' efforts in World War II. Painted camouflage gray and nicknamed the Gray Ghost, the ship's accommodations were increased from 2,140 to 5,500 capacity, would eventually rise to nearly 10,000. And she began making trips all over the globe, from Southampton to Sydney. It was during this time that the ship was part of a maritime tragedy. In 1942, she collided with a British light cruiser, HMS Curaçao, cutting the smaller ship in two and resulting in the deaths of more than 300 of the Curaçao's crew. In 1947, the Queen Mary returned to civilian service as a luxury liner, and for 20 years, until the rise in popularity of jet travel carried on in something of her former glory. She was retired in 1967 and permanently moored in the city of Long Beach, California. The city converted the ship into a floating hotel and opened it as a tourist attraction in 1971. The Queen Mary ceased operations in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Stories of strange sights and sounds soon grew to the point that the ship became known as one of the most haunted hotels in America. During the ship's sea-going years, at least a dozen crew members and more than 36 passengers died on board. The ghost of an 18-year-old crewman has been seen near the watertight door that crushed him during a drill in 1966. And the spirit of Senior Second Officer W.E. Stark, who died one night in 1949 after accidentally drinking acid in instead of gin has been spotted wandering the ship's corridors. In the region of the Queen Mary's bow, where she collided with the Curacoa, crashing and grinding noises have also been reported. The Hotel Chelsea, New York City. Bourbon Orleans Hotel, New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans and Savannah, Georgia, I forgot to mention, are some really big hotspots for paranormal activity. The Emily Morgan Hotel, San Antonio, Texas. The Stanley Hotel, Estes Park, Colorado. The hotel that inspired The Shining. Hotel del Coronado, San Diego, California. There is a lot of stories in here. I wish I could read them all in one setting. But, like I said, if something catches your eye and you'd like me to read it, then let me know, and I'll be more than happy to do it. The Marshall House, again, Savannah, Georgia. The Hollywood Roosevelt, Los Angeles. Nice car. The Hay Adams in Washington, D.C. Hotel Alex Johnson, Rapid City, South Dakota. The Driscoll Austin, Texas. Take a look at this photo. Man, with an ominous sky like that, you know that place has to be haunted. And look at that. That is some scary business going on. Chapter 3. Eerie Ghost Towns. I was right. It is that ghost town. It was the gold rush. During the gold rush, once home to 10,000 people during the California gold rush, Bodie, designated a National Historic Landmark in 1961, now sits abandoned. The structures that are left remain frozen in time, preserved by California state parks. St. Elmo, Colorado. Some old western towns. I could just picture some cowboys walking across, going to the saloon or whatnot. Same here. Take a look at that. Rhyolite, Nevada. It's crazy to think that, these towns, these old western towns, used to be busy and bustling with all kinds of life. Virginia City and Nevada City, Montana. An old school. It's an old one-room schoolhouse. Those are pretty neat. We actually have a couple that are museums around here, around these parts. Cashapp, Alabama. Alaska. Looks like a huge mining business of some sort, or some sort of a mill. Montana. There's the house on the front cover. There it is again. Terlingua, Texas. Bodie, California. Bulloville, Florida. Frisco, Utah. Chapter 4. Paranormal. Places. St. Louis Cemetery, number 1, New Orleans, Louisiana, or St. Louis, whatever you want to call it. St. Louis, St. Louis, St. Louise, I don't know. But yeah. Hollywood Forever Cemetery, Los Angeles. Iroquois Theater, Chicago. So that must have had a fire. Some people must have died in it or something. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Weston, West Virginia. Charter Street Cemetery, Salem, Massachusetts. Ohio State Reformatory, Mansfield, Ohio. That is a very beautiful cathedral. San Fernando Cathedral, San Antonio, Texas. Sasquatch. There he is. It's the famous photo of Sasquatch. Count Orlok, creeping out of the little thing there. Alien. Death Angels. Oh my goodness. The Demogorgon. Pennywise. Godzilla. The Thing. Loch Ness Monster. And the Wendigo. Look at the beautiful smile on that fella. And the final chapter. Chapter 5. Unsolved Mysteries. The Watcher House, Westfield, New Jersey. This here's a very interesting house. The Winchester Mystery House, San Jose, California. Mrs. Winchester had the place built like a maze. Trapdoors, staircases that lead to nowhere, all kinds of things. It's really interesting. Sprague Mansion, Cranston, Rhode Island. Or Sprague Mansion, Sprague, I don't know. Franklin Castle in Cleveland, Ohio. The Lizzie Borden House, Fall River, Massachusetts. Haunted Mystery Stories. A Christmas Carol, which is one of my favorite Christmas movies, by the way. Ghost Story. Beloved. The Haunting of Hill House. House of Leaves. The turn of the screw. The only good Indians. And the woman in black. And that is the end of that magazine. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it could entertain you as well as relax you. And again, if there was any stories in here that I did not read and that you would like me to read, then let me know in the comments below, and I can make another video where I read more of the stories featured in this magazine. The same goes with any of the other ghost story magazines that I have done or am going to do. Just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to read more. I do have another magazine that I'll be doing, mainly focused on witches. So stay tuned for that. I hope you all stay safe, happy, healthy, and of course, relaxed. This is Lloyd's ASMR, signing off.